Small Town Nice by Jim Wright. On a cloudy April morning, Baxter Grissom stood at the edge of the town graveyard with his toy dachshund, Dixie. He peered through binoculars, studying a knot of people gathered on the far side of the cemetery. They circled an open grave. A sign stuck in the dirt next to the grave read, "Taylorville Nice Contest. The nicest person in town over the next week will win their spot in this cozy grave." A big smiley face adorned the sign. The onlookers seemed upset, talking excitedly and pointing at the empty pit. Baxter cracked a crinkly smile. He had dug the grave. Taylorville was indeed a nice town, and Baxter hated it. The kind of nice where walkers waved to passing cars, where pedestrians smiled at one another like members of a cult, where Christmas carolers serenaded random houses. Where scouts picked up trash from the streets. Baxter was wired differently. He was born in Taylorville, but darker currents ran through him. He said fuck a lot, and, as a kid, would pull the wings of flies and throw rocks at neighborhood cats. But constant surveillance from so many watchful, benevolent eyes in the village kept most of Baxter's antisocial impulses bottled up. When a young man, Baxter had dreamed of moving to Chicago to find refuge in exciting, anonymous city life. But after a failed marriage, that dream faded in despair. Now pushing 50, Baxter lived alone. Reluctantly, he braved his town's cheerful streets, pushing past the smiles and waves and greetings of townsfolk, as if wading through saccharine jello. Baxter exited the cemetery, with Dixie circling on her leash and lunging for squirrels. He headed towards the town park bordering the Annamosh River, thinking with pleasure about his April Fool's escapade. He had dug the grave last night, with only a pick, shovel, and flashlight. A harmless prank to tweak the town's nice police. Entering the park, Baxter heard the cascading river swollen with snowmelt. With a stab of annoyance, he noticed Mrs. Dubček near the water's edge, waving her cane at him in a beckoning motion. Baxter turned his head, pretending not to see her. But Dixie strained at her leash, eager to run to Mrs. Dubček, one of her favorite people. Baxter stumped grimly on, dragging the little dog behind. Mrs. Dubček was a stout woman with a halo of unruly white hair who moved slowly but inexorably through the town on her daily rounds. Every morning, she stopped at the park to lean over the wooden railing and stare at the frothing river. If there was a ringleader of nice in Taylorville, it was Mrs. Dubček. She was president of the St. Leo's Church Women's Group, wrote a column sunny days for the local newspaper, and, bless her heart, knew everybody's goddamn business. Whenever Baxter ran into her, Mrs. Dubček would ask about his extended family in a honeyed voice more excruciating than a body cavity search. As Baxter hurried from the park, he had a sudden revelation that jolted like electricity. He realized how to commit the perfect murder, and Mrs. Dubček would be the target. The next morning dawned, sunny and clear. Baxter left his house before 8 and walked briskly to the river park. He intended to leave Dixie home, but her look of silent reproach was so damning when he tried to sneak out the door that Baxter brought her along. As they entered the park, she tugged at her leash like a torpedo. Baxter slipped behind a screen of poplars, picked up Dixie, and watched the street. 10 minutes later, he saw Mrs. Dubček's nimbus of silver white hair bobbing along the sidewalk. She turned into the park, made her way haltingly to the river's edge, leaned heavily on her elbows against the wooden railing, and contemplated the rushing water. And nothing happened. Baxter watched with rising impatience as the woman stared for long minutes at the river. Abruptly, her section of railing collapsed in a clatter of planks, and Mrs. Dubček pitched forward into the cascading stream. She gave a wavering cry and was swept away downstream like a bobbing cork. Baxter silently exulted. He had visited the park the night before and strategically removed screws from the railing to virtually guarantee that it would fall away at the slightest pressure. The scheme had worked perfectly and was untraceable. Dixie the dachshund had been watching Mrs. Dubček. When the woman disappeared into the water, Dixie gave a howl, squirmed frantically out of Baxter's arms, and raced towards the river. Baxter shouted, then followed at a shuffling run. Without hesitation, the dog leaped into the water. Baxter stumbled after it, lunging over the bank into the river. He gasped and flailed in the frigid, turbulent stream. Baxter caught one glimpse of Dixie, her nose above water, paddling through foaming eddies. Then the water closed over him. News raced through Taylorville that Mrs. Dubček had fallen into the Animosh, but, luckily, floated buoyant as a bath toy through the rough current to the shore. She swore to firefighters giving her first aid that she had seen Baxter Grissom leap into the water to rescue her. As Mrs. Dubček huddled in a blanket, a bedraggled dachshund approached, tail wagging. 2 days later, Baxter's body was recovered downriver. It was obvious to everyone that Baxter, previously thought to be quite a gloomy Gus, had sacrificed his life trying to save Mrs. Dubček. The town was humbled at the news. Just days ago, some dark soul had made fun of Taylorville with a mock grave to demean its cherished culture of niceness. How better to refute this mockery than to bury Baxter, a local hero, in that very grave? All of Taylorville attended the funeral service. The headstone included a big smiley face, symbol of nice folks everywhere. At the conclusion of the graveside ceremony, the townspeople lined up to smile and wave goodbye to the casket, as Baxter would have wanted.